Body Sense is an exploration between portraiture and the human form. The sculptures and the pyrographs are meant to be gestural in nature and show evidence of my hand while I'm making them. For me, the work is about acceptance and showing vulnerability and showing things that may be seen or unseen. And I often use my image as a reference. I use the concept of my image from my mind because it is familiar and ingrained with me rather than looking at a mirror when I'm working. I also think it's important to note that the materials that I'm using, I try to do as little revision as possible through the making process. So while making a pyrograph, I am building mark on mark to show value and build up the form. And it's something that can't be taken back once the hot glass touches the paper. When I'm making the ceramic form and I'm pinching the surface, I try to not step back and make revision so that the work doesn't become overworked. So it's acceptance of my hand, it's evidence of my hand. This is the first time that I've shown the ceramic works and the pyrographs together. And I think they're both special because my mindset while making both of them is very similar, but the process is very different. There's immediacy that I appreciate with the pyrographs because once the molten glass touches the paper, it's not a mark that I can take back. I started drawing with pencil and brush on the ceramic works before I made the pyrographs. And I had this opportunity to use the Belger Annex Hot Shop to do a special project. And I thought for a long time what I wanted that project to be because I didn't want to just replicate some of the ceramic works that I was already making. And I wanted to think about my work differently than what it already was. And I wanted there to be fluidity. And I felt like this drawing process really allowed that. And someone who inspired me was Itsuku Ichikawa, and I was inspired by their abstract drawings and couldn't help but see figurative forms in some of them, and I thought maybe I could use that technique to do something a little more deliberate that was personal to me. I'm not someone who likes to draw on paper. I think that the border of the paper feels limiting. But in this process, I had a punty with the molten glass. On the end, the paper was on the ground, and so this physical distance between myself and the paper allowed me to feel a little more comfortable with this type of mark making. When I went into the hot shop, I had a few ideas in mind of what I wanted to create during that session, and I practiced it over and over again until I was satisfied with the group of drawings that I was able to produce. The relationship between the pyrographs and the ceramics are interesting because I'm trying to do some of the same imagery, but ceramics takes a long time and the pyrographs are very quick. And so it feels like I'm continuing to build a visual language that is personal to me. When I'm making the ceramic forms, I spend a lot of time building them, and I often create multiples at the same time, and I don't get to draw on them until after they've gone through their bisque firing. And the drawing with the ceramic stain is one of my favorite parts of the process, but it's the quickest part and it's the last part. And so it feels like I slowly build up to being able to do that, where with the pyrographs, it's more instantaneous and there's quicker gratification, which is a fun balance for me. I think there's a level of exposure in the exhibition, and I would consider myself a modest person or someone who has grown up with modest values that have been imposed by society or self-imposed. And making these nude figures or partially nude figures, it's an opportunity to show vulnerability of the body without having to apologize, and not something that I am comfortable with, but I use it as an exploration of part of my ego, the part that is unapologetic, the part that is direct with others, that is confrontational and will meet your gaze when you're looking at me. When I started making the heads, I was thinking a lot about dreams, introspection, how we relate to ourselves at a deeper level that is sometimes difficult to access. And when I was first making the work, I was imagining a whole group of these just floating in space and letting the viewer navigate the sculpture, which is at my eye level. And so I was thinking about isolating the head just to focus on that kind of mindset of introspection. When I'm making the ceramic forms and starting to build from clay, I will build from the table up. And so during that process, I add in the physical features that we can see through the form. And so like mouth, nose, eyes, things that get embellished further with the brushwork. And something that I hold back from is making major alterations so that it doesn't become overworked. And so in a way, it's becoming comfortable with the kind of mark that my hand can make, and using it as a primary tool. And I'm always working from table up, and the only exception is if I'm adding arms to the form. So it's always bottom to top. The reason that I want to make work that communicates vulnerability is because I think that it's important to come to terms with one's own vulnerability in order to move past them. After a piece is bisque fired and I start to draw on it with the ink, I slowly build up from a lighter value to a darker value. And something that I like about the form is that the form is so irregular that when the ceramic stain is being brushed on, it sort of dances as it's falling down. And I think showing that weight is really interesting just because it's not neat, and I don't think it needs to be. The color choice, everything is monochromatic because I'm using a ceramic stain, and I actually it's a black ceramic stain that I discovered turns red or turns brown in the kiln. And so I had this happy surprise where I didn't think it was gonna look like this. And because of that, and then doing the pyrographs, there was a very clear relationship in the color because everything is monochromatic. It is that sepia tone color. During one of the sessions I had in the hot shop, I had a few minutes and I thought I should do something fun because everything I do is very serious. And so I just started making like the rib cage of a skeleton, and I started building the body and thinking, how can I make this skeleton fit on the paper, and what kind of positions I can put it in, and just like trying to not overwork the drawing. I don't know, I just thought the skeletons were so much fun because it was like removing all the flesh allowed to just show this basic structure of the body that I think we can all relate to, but putting it into this position that is a little uncomfortable was humorous to me. And then also really, like the eyes of one of them, I think are just to show this depth that is a little haunting, which I liked. So, yeah. Using the glass to draw, because it's so soft but hot and it cools so quickly, the work time is maybe 10 seconds for each puntee that was handed to me. And it took a team to be able to produce those. But depending on like how long the puntee was on there, or the glass was on the puntee, and how the shape of the glass changed, it would create a different mark. So it was fun because there was so little control. Like there was a little control because it was 10 seconds of deliberate work, but then the amount of control just changed so much through that short amount of time. And then it was, okay, again, I'm ready again, and again, and again, until I was satisfied with the image. I want people to be able to navigate the exhibition, to think about the body, how it might relate to them, the different themes that I'm thinking about with vulnerability and trauma, and be able to reflect on those things.